you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
Today's guest is Mandy Maiden. Mandy's an FEI dressage specialist, rider, trainer, competitor coach and coach educator. She's now working with Philippe Carl in the classical French dressage system. How are you today, Mandy?
I'm really good, thanks, Glenys. How are you? I hope you're well too.
Yeah, absolutely. Living in Queensland, living the dream, I think.
You might be a bit warmer than us today.
Yes, but we do have air conditioning, so we're right there. Mandy, we're going to start off with a quote that you might use. It could be an inspirational quote or a quote that you use when you're teaching. Have you got one for us?
It was a bit hard to choose just one because I actually really love quotes and I use them all the time with teaching. My students would be able to tell you that. But my favourite one, and probably it's favourite because it's a bit dark and it really motivates me, is a quote that says, "What we must do is work in légèreté because anything else is a massacre of innocence." And that quote came from, I hope I pronounced this guy's name correctly, Henrique, and in correspondence with Nuno Oliveira. So to me, it's a really heavy quote, but it sort of really motivates me to look at how I work with horses and how I instruct my students to work with horses.
Okay, now do you use that at all when you're teaching to work with any of your other students or not? You just use it as a personal quote?
I use it for both, I suppose. A personal quote because it's really probably navigated me to where I am at the moment with working with horses, but also with students because I think it makes them aware that if we're not working in légèreté, if we're not working in lightness, then we're really making the horses' lives incredibly difficult and to the point where we may influence them becoming unsound or, shortening their life, their productive life or their future.
Yep.
So definitely my students know that quote as well.
Yes, good. Okay, now I'm going to ask you about your first memories of horses and how you started with horses.
Well, I suppose when I was really little, my earliest memories, I don't come from a horsey family, but I was always obsessed with horses right from a little girl. We used to have, Bart Cummings had a racing stable near us where we lived in Glenelg in South Australia, and the race horses would get exercise just walking up and down our road in the afternoons, and I just remember having my little face stuck at the window every time to watch them go past, and I was just fascinated with how beautiful they were. And then I suppose like us horsey kids do, you harass your parents until they take you to a riding school and you start to have some lessons. And I was probably doing that when I was about 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old, I think. And that was really how I got started.
Yeah, good. Okay, so just moving on from there, were you one of the kids that, would hang around the riding school and see if they could sort of work all day for nothing just to get a bit of a free ride?
Yep, I was that kid. I mucked out stables, as many as you wanted me to do. I cleaned tack, I groomed horses, I hosed them off, and in return for that I was really fortunate to be able to ride horses that were at that particular stable and even take them to shows and competitions, etc. later on as I started to develop my skills, I suppose, as a young rider. So, but I definitely didn't have my own horse, so I was the kid that did whatever you asked me to do so I could ride your horse.
That probably built your character a bit, actually, just to get you so that almost to weed you out to see if you really meant to be with horses or not, because if you hadn't done all the work and you hadn't
absolutely.
persisted.
Yes, I mean, you couldn't tire me out, so I stayed there.
Okay, so we do ask people what they think the core skills or the character traits are to work with horses and work in the horse industry. You've sort of said it yourself, but do you want to go through that? What would you tell someone else that may be doing all of the riding school and the mucking out stables and everything else just in exchange for riding? What would you say the core skills are?
Well, I think you're developing them when you're doing that because it's a fantastic industry to work in, but it involves a lot of hard work and you've got to have a lot of tenacity and persistence and be prepared to do the work that might be physically hard and not particularly great fun. It's not all just riding. So I think if they're happy to do that, they're already proving who they are and proving their worth to be able to earn their place in that industry. So definitely that self-discipline, that real passion that keeps you doing that sort of work, as well as the great stuff, but it keeps you there and proves how much you really love it and how much you want to be there.
Yeah.
So I think those sort of skills are incredibly valuable to develop as a young person, that ability just to work really hard and just keep chipping away at something until it becomes what you want it to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We've talked about your first memories and Bart Cummings and the racehorses in Glenelg, and then going on and working in a riding school. And we know that you've gone on and had quite a lot of competition horses, done well, as a successful rider. You're working now and still doing dressage, training dressage. Tell us a bit more about the work that you're doing now and what drives you to do that.
Sure. Well, I suppose about 4 years ago, I applied to be a trainee teacher in the École de Légèreté, which is the School of Lightness. It's Philippe Carl from France. It's his private school, a classical training school, and that probably slowed my competition aspect. Like up until then, I had competed for 25, 30 years in competition dressage, etc. But once I started to enter that school, because I was always looking for probably a better way to work with horses that I thought was better for the horse. And so when I entered that school, that really changed my life in terms of what I do with horses now. And I think you can still compete. I still occasionally take the horse to a competition, but it's more if it's something that I want to do, and it's not something that I would say I'm never going to do again, but it's not my number one priority anymore. It's being able to train the horses to high school, to do all of the high school movements, which you can then use in your dressage tests as well. But it's just the way that it's trained is such a beautiful way to work with horses that I think that's, where I love to be, where I'm at now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you're really enjoying the training. Do you think that you're enjoying the training because you've got more knowledge of the requirements?
Yes, definitely. Training only probably becomes something you really like to do when you start to develop a level of competence and you've got the theoretical knowledge that it's developing. I mean, I always think one of my other favourite quotes is, it takes 2 lifetimes to learn everything about riding. So we're never going to get to a point where we know everything, but at least once you start to get into that, first lifetime and you start to have studied it a lot, then it definitely becomes so much more enjoyable because you can start to see why things happen and how you can assist the horse to be in the right balance to do that particular movement, or you just make it easier for the horse. And if something's easy for a horse, they'll just offer it, and it's so amazingly effortless for them. We just have to make sure that we are the least possible hindrance we can be. So the more you know, the less of a hindrance you can be. And then the training becomes great. Whereas I think back when you're first learning, like I still work with lots of riders that are just beginning, and I sort of say to them, look, I sort of almost feel sorry for you a bit at the moment because this won't feel great for a long time. You've got to put the hard yards in and really develop your skills and develop your knowledge. In a few years' time, it might start to feel like it's easy, sitting trot or, riding transitions or, working on your lateral work. It's not easy until you've got a bit of water under the bridge, I suppose, too. Bit of miles on the clock.
All right. So we talked about, having a career with horses, and you talked about it being hard work.
Yes.
But, having tenacity, persistence, self-discipline. But now that you've put the hard yards in, you're still learning, you're still progressing. What do you think the keys are to excelling in what you're doing at the moment? Because it's more than just persistence and self-discipline. It's a lot more than that. So what do you think the character traits are that now that have been you've been able to bring out in you, French dressage, this system, or something that you found within yourself to be able to undertake this type of study?
I think it's that real commitment to a lifelong learning, and probably you need to sort of almost leave your ego behind a little bit because you have to have that humility to say, I've got to get a little bit better every day. I never really arrive at that point where now I'm, fantastic. Now I can do all of these things. It's more that you've got that humility, being able to just, I suppose, chip away at something and try your best every day to be a little bit better than you were yesterday, that commitment to that. And it's got to come from a passion. You wouldn't want to choose this life if you really were only partly interested in riding horses and partly interested in wanting to work with horses. Maybe on Tuesdays you wanted to play golf and on Wednesdays you did tennis, but Thursdays you did horses. It wouldn't work. It's got to be a total passion, like a total obsession, really. My husband would probably agree with that I think you have to be a little bit weird to really want to be obsessed with that. And, there's probably not many people that want to dedicate their whole life to it, I suppose. And, that you just live it, breathe it, think it all the time. Whenever there's an opportunity to read another book, I'm always reading, or if there's an opportunity to go and watch another instructor or another trainer, I'm always trying to be there. So, it is probably a bit of an obsession, which sounds a bit difficult, doesn't it?
No, I understand.
But then you reap the benefits of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, I know you've talked about Philippe Carl. Is there anyone else that's influenced you as much as, or someone that sort of got you to the point that you are now?
Yeah, well, definitely before I had come into contact with Philippe Carl, I was also looking at a lot of the old masters, the Francois Boucher, La Guidinière, Steinbrecht, even more recent masters, Nuno Oliveira, Franz Maringer, Tom Roberts, a good old South Australian as well, in the dressage field. And then also I spent a lot of time studying in a horsemanship field as well. So people like Tom Dorrance and Ray Hunt, I did a lot of reading on what their philosophies were about working with horses. And then more recently, Neil Davies, another Australian, has written an excellent book on fear-free horse training, which I really loved. Ross Jacobs, another Australian, on the essence of good horsemanship. So there was definitely, I was looking for more than just the German training scale and how do I ride a better half pass and how do I do tempi changes and how do I do a Grand Prix dressage test. I was looking for more of that connection with the horse, because I started to realise that if I do that better, all of that Grand Prix stuff becomes achievable. The horse can do it anyway if I just can find a better way to communicate with them. So those people were sort of like, I suppose, almost little signposts for me along the way, along the journey. I learnt so much from looking into what they had found out about horses and what their philosophies were.
So just sort of putting you in the right direction then.
To keep putting me, because my main ideas in those days was, look, how can I do this better for the horse? Obviously I had a beautiful, well, she's still with me now, but a beautiful Trakehner mare that took me from sort of the beginning breaking in stage through to Prix St George, and she could also do all of the Grand Prix movements at home, but she became more and more tense as the training went along. So I realised, well, I'm the cause of this is the problem. So that horse definitely made me start to sort of delve into the relationship with the horse and the connection and the communication, and that's where those people helped me along the way, either from their books,
what was her name?
Or else.
Yeah.
Sorry?
What's her name?
Oh, Alouetta.
Okay.
Alouetta.
Yeah.
A beautiful mare she is, and she was my most successful horse to date, I suppose, in terms of competition. We went to the Nationals in Sydney every year for about 4 or 5 years in a row, I think, and we were second on the good old Horse Magazine leaderboard at the end of one season. But, fabulous horse who could have done so much more, except she was held back because she had to put up with me. But she taught me an amazing amount, and I so often wish I could start her again now with knowing what I know now, like we would all say. But, she's just a fabulous horse, beautiful girl.
Are there any other horses? She's just the standout one.
Oh, actually, one of your questions was about that, wasn't it? Horses that inspire you. And I thought, gosh, they all inspire you, all for different reasons. She was fabulous because she tolerated me and she just took me to an amazing level. Like, I just thought some little kid that used to ride in Glenelg would be able to go and do that level of work. That's, to me, it was incredible that she could take me there. But I also have had, a beautiful thoroughbred horse who I did eventing with, and the same thing. I just think, wow, look at what that horse would do for me, and with my limited level of skill. And my current riding horse was probably the one that made me keep looking for the classical system, because she perhaps wasn't as fancy and as flashy as the Trakehner mare. So in competition, we were sort of a bit always the bridesmaids. Like, we'd do a nice test and she would try her best, but we weren't the prettiest, the most amazing moving. So I kept thinking, well, I'm holding her back. How can I show what she can really do? So that made me start to look into Leisure-Tay. Plus, she was a horse that was much heavier and a stronger horse. So we were very much on the forehand. We were very much sort of hindered by that incorrect, balance falling to the shoulders. So balance really started to make me think I've got to learn a bit more about this. But yeah, and I have a super young horse at the moment who's a lovely, talented guy, but a little bit quirky in his mind. So he makes me have to really keep exploring how can I communicate this better? How can I, work with him? So I think they all, they're just all amazing horses to work with.
Yeah, good. What about your proudest moment?
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, and I think to me as a horse person and as a rider, I'm probably the proudest when my horses, when I take them somewhere, so if we go and do a demonstration ride somewhere we recently did a masterclass for Leisure-Tay, and if I take them there and they are completely relaxed and they're really happy and they go up to people, they're not worried about being in a big crowd, I'm really proud of them then, because I think at least I've sort of tried to do my best to bring up well-adjusted little four-legged citizens, that they love their work, they're really happy in what they do, they're really sort of well-adjusted, like they're not spooky, they're not scared, they're not tense, they're not grinding their teeth or sticking their tongues out, or, they just do what, mum asks them to do, and they go, yeah, sure, let's do that, and they're full of energy and enthusiasm, and, they've got expression, they're joyful, that makes me proud, because I think, that's who they want to be, they're not out there looking like little slaves or looking like Andrew McLean coined that term, learned helplessness, and I think, I see a bit of that in competition horses, and that really makes me sad, whereas these guys, we're not the best, in the bunch by any means, but we're really joyful and we have a good time together and it's fun, and, and they're the horses too that are angels for the vet or the farrier, so that makes me proud as well. But I suppose the most recent proud moment was I've just sat my written exam for my Leisure-Tay licence, and I had to do an hour and a quarter presentation on my mare, which involved lunging work on the cavesson, in-hand work, as well as riding, and that I was pretty proud of her, because she was amazing. She just was totally with me the whole time, and the hour and a quarter just went like that. She just was totally available. Whatever I asked her to do, she's like, yep, sure, Mum, let's do that.
Yeah.
Fabulous horse. So that makes me proud of them.
Good. Tell me what your biggest challenge has been. I'm thinking not just recently, but, within your lifetime of horses.
Okay. Well, I was thinking my biggest challenge probably is always to sort of live up to what I want to achieve, in the sense that, I'd like to make things better for every horse that I come into contact with. So sometimes that's easy because, a student comes to you and they're really open to change.
Yep.
Sometimes it's a little more difficult because they might not necessarily see the immediate benefit of what you're trying to achieve. So that can be a challenge too. But they're probably the hardest things I've had to deal with, which is pretty minor, isn't it, in terms of what other people would be dealing with. Maybe the challenge too was when the horse that was working, my lovely mare Alouetta, was working at that high level, and I just thought it was going to be a walk in the park to then go on from that starting off FEI level to go through to Grand Prix. But then because she started to get very upset about the work, that was probably perhaps a real kick in the guts for me, where I had to really take that on the chin and go, you caused this, Mandy, so this horse is telling you loud and clear that I'm really upset about how we're doing this. So that was probably my hardest one, but it was my best one, in the sense that it made me totally look at what I was doing and totally assess that and make the changes that I need to, which has sort of led me to where I am now. That's a long-winded answer, isn't it, to that question?
No, and I like your answer, because even though it's a challenge, you said yes, but it was a challenge at the time, but it's really led me to where I am. So I've really learnt from that. So it's the biggest lesson. So sometimes your biggest challenges can be your best lessons, can't they?
I think so, and I always say that to students too, like, find the good. So, with everything that you might think at the time it's really difficult, you're having trouble with flying changes, or a horse that won't go through the water jump, or a horse you can't get on the float, or look for the lesson in that. Like, find the good in there, that there's always going to be a massive learning opportunity in there for you if you look for it and you take it out, rather than just get upset or get demoralised or give up, then you miss that chance. So, yeah, I think that's probably really important for all of us to look for that instead of see the obvious of, oh, I can't do this, this is terrible, it's not working.
Yep.
Because there's when one door shuts, there's always one that's opening and you just got to look for it.
Yep. Okay, now put on your coach's cap or your instructor's cap.
Yep.
And think about people that you're training. What do you think is a common challenge that they've got, and how would you correct it?
Yeah, well, I thought about this one a lot too, and I was particularly thinking that probably currently the modern sort of style of riding is putting horses in a bit of big trouble in terms of their balance. And so the problem that I see the most often is that horses are out of balance, and therefore balance for a horse is life or death, or it's relaxation or it's tension, depending on whether they've got their balance or they haven't. So to me, that's the biggest issue to address. And if you even take that back a step before you can really help the horse with their balance, the rider has to be in balance. So, of course, it's position, working on your own position so that you can be in balance, and then you can start to offer the horse a lifeline as well to start to change their balance. So, so that's probably the two areas that I try to really hone my coaching into is horses can only go as well as you ride them, so we need to make sure that we're riding as well as we can today and then a bit better tomorrow and a bit better the next day. So absolutely working on position and the balance that comes from that, so then we can start to address the horse who's already naturally on the forehand by nature, but then when we sit on him or her, we put them even more on the forehand. So can we start to redress that that balance aspect with our knowledge too? But definitely starting to look at the rider first. You can't sort of bypass that, I don't think.
No, it's a bit hard to, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, hang on a sec. Let me interrupt to let people know about the horse industry qualifications at onlinehorsecollege.com. If you have a look at the flexible options, there's online theory with practical components that can be completed by video or with a qualified expert in your area. That website again is onlinehorsecollege.com. Thanks. Okay, now what about a book? If you've got a book you could recommend for our listeners?
I've got a million books because I love books. But I think to sort of understand the current state of dressage, I think the best book to read is Philippe Carl's book, of course, I would say that. But his book called Twisted Truths of Modern Dressage, because it's a really interesting, thought-provoking, challenging book, because it's not just an instructional book, but it's also a book to make you really think about what we're currently doing with horses and riders and how we're working horses, and is that the best for the horse? And I think that's a fantastic book. Perhaps to sort of address a little bit the cultural decline a bit of where equitation is, at the moment, and particularly the competition aspect of it too. So I think that's a super book.
I think just going beyond the book, I think, you judge a book by its cover, and I think on the cover is the title, Twisted Truths of Modern Dressage, and I think it's a great title. Yeah.
It's a super title. Yep. And I think Philippe likes to, definitely challenge people's thinking. So he would have to have a title like that.
Yep. All right. Now, Mandy, you've got, you're really happy with the way things are going with your horses, with your training, with your riders. What are you looking forward to? Is it more of the same? Have you got some riders that you're excited about? You tell me what you're looking forward to.
I suppose probably I'm not that exciting like that, because I really just
you're just happy doing what you're doing.
The next day, ride every day, teach every day, keep learning, studying. Definitely, students always inspire me, whether it's the lady that I teach who is in her 70s who hunts twice a week and is still trying to work on her dressage. She's super inspiring. And then you have, the little beginner boy who is just first learning to canter on a horse. That just keeps you going every day. And then you get the opportunity to work with some amazing people as well. Like I have recently had Edith Capel, who is an instructor from Hungary who works in Les Retés, who stayed here for a week, and we got to work with her every day. So those things are definitely things you're looking forward to. But just the everyday work with the horses, work with the riders, and chip away at my own, riding as well. That to me that's a good life.
Good.
If you can do that every day, that's pretty darn good.
Sure. Yep. Now, Mandy, can you sum up your philosophy into a lesson today so a listener's got something to take away and think about for the day?
Yeah, I thought about that a lot too, because I could talk forever about a whole lot of different things. So to me, a few things that were really important, I was chewing over those, and I think it comes back to that word balance again. So I think that if riders can really, really start to honestly look at balance, first of all in their own sense, and I would strongly recommend people just to try this little exercise. And in lègerté, we're often known as those classical riders that have their hands up all the time, and that's a good way to sort of, I suppose, poke a bit of fun at us as well. But if people honestly rode, and maybe just do it at home when no one's watching you, with your elbows at your side and your hands up higher, maybe like as though you're holding a book that you're reading, and just sit on your horse like that, walk, trot, canter for a couple of weeks, and just see how that starts to change your balance. Because if we have that sort of obsession with our hands really low, then the tendency is that also makes our shoulders tip forward, particularly when we're learning to ride. And so I think just carrying your hands a little higher for a couple of weeks and just seeing what that does to your core and your balance and your position, that would be something that I would recommend everyone to have a try. And from then their horse's point of view, if you're acting upwards with your hands, you're acting upwards in the corner of the horse's lips when you use the bit. So you're not acting in a downward action and squashing the tongue and squashing the bit against the bars of the mouth, both of which are really painful for the horse and then therefore causes contractions and et cetera, et cetera. The horse becomes more contracted instead of being more relaxed. So I think that's a win-win. If the rider tries to act upwards with the hands when they're applying a rein aid, then it can have a positive effect on their balance. And also from their horse's point of view, you might start to get more mobility of the jaw. The horse starts to really mobilise the mouth, the tongue, and demonstrates its relaxation that way too. So yeah, I think that could be a win-win. I reckon that would be the lesson I would like to suggest people give themselves a go. You can do it yourself. It's not something that you need to go and book into. You can just do it as a study lesson at home.
And I think even if you think of a rider, just picturing a rider with their hands up and hands down, you might picture a rider who's forcing their hands down who does become a bit round-shouldered and leaning forward, whereas a rider with their hands up is looking up and shoulders back and sitting tall. Yeah. So just that picture itself is good.
I was a kid in the round yard just to see if I could, just to see how long I could go before the book fell off my head. But that was, and it does work after a while. But I think definitely that feeling that you can become more vertically balanced and therefore start to offer your horse a better balance too. I think that would be something that it could be quite life-changing, I think, for riders if they gave that a go. Not that we're saying keep your hands up all the time, but it just use it to change your balance for a little while and see what happens.
Good. Now, how can people contact you, Mandy?
I'm not super duper with websites or anything like that, but email is good.
Okay, yep.
So my email is sjmaiden, MAIDEN, @tpg.com.au. That's probably the best way to contact me. If they look at Philippe Carl's website, I'm also listed as one of the trainee teachers, and that has my contact details as well. So that's another way to contact me, and hopefully I'll be good at replying because you tend to spend a lot of time outside with horses and not always a lot of time inside doing correspondence.
Sure. And your contact details will be available on horsechats.com/Mandy Maiden as well. Mandy,
thank you. That's great.
Been very good talking to you today. I'm sure that everyone's going to go away and even just walk away, carry your hands a little higher, look up, shoulders back. Yep.
Yeah, just see what that does for you.
Yep. All right, thank you very much, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
Thanks very much, Glenys. Thanks for the opportunity to chat.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, wait, before you go, if you're an equestrian coach or a horse riding instructor, or even if you aspire to be one, have a look at the free video series for horse riding instructors on the Horse Chats website. Go there now, have a look, horsechats.com.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.